So, Freddie Prinze Jr., who some of you may know as Kanan Jarrus in Star Wars Rebels, and probably something else. I don't really care. Recently went on a rant on a podcast about Star Wars. It felt like more of a sort of a response to the current view of things such as Rey, the direction stories of going in, and he sort of I think he felt like a lot of rants. He felt that it was more um, ponage and more common sense than he thought than it actually was. I don't really think it was, and maybe he goes more in depth in the actual podcast, but I just don't. I just don't. Let's just hold him account to that rant, and I took some cliff notes here. So the first thing he said was,
The first one was for fucking kids.
Right. Yep.
The second three were for different fucking kids. And this one is for kids.
so this is not really an argument. Star Wars is for kids is not really a thing. I mean, if let's grant you that it is for kids, which I would say it's for all ages, which means kids can watch it. But Star Wars has never really been like child friendly in the same aspect. I think, and that just might be the stigma we have when we think of something as for kids. Um, but people that have watched anime or cartoons in general should know that for kids doesn't mean that it has to be dumbed down or anything. Um, and let's remember that planets are blown up, family members are killed, kids are decapitated, to lose their hands. Anakin Skywalker in Episode 2 slaughters a village of Tusken Raiders, Sand People, and later on he goes, "I kill them all, the women and the children." For kids, what does that mean? To say it's for kids, at least in the concept of the West, would be that it's allowed to be stupid, or it can be stupid because it's for kids. Well, first of all, no, that's just not how that works at all. Avatar: The Last Airbender is for kids, and it is very good, very intelligent television, very great writing. Adventure Time has that right amount of silliness. Over the Garden Wall, Alice in Wonderland, the Disney animated one, Beauty and the Beast. These are all movies and works for kids that adults enjoy. And to say that each generation is now, well, this is for kids too, and this generation is for kids. Well, but they're all telling this one big story. Like, yes, I would argue that each set of movies should be viewed on their own merit and judged on their own merit, but they're all in the same way continuing or explaining the story. That's sort of it.
Just pissed off that Han Solo gave the fucking Millennium Falcon to a girl.
So, I don't think anyone's upset that Rey has the Falcon. We're upset about the misconception that Han gave her the Falcon. The idea that Han would take an interest in Rey is like, hey, I could use a partner, someone else in this trio as I try to avoid all of my problems, with my son going to the dark side and not talking to my wife and unable to find my brother-in-law / best human friend, I need to avoid this. But whatever. Let's say he sees great potential in Rey as a smuggler and whatnot. I can grant that. But that isn't the issue here. To say that what old Freddie Prinze Jr. and what old FPJ is saying here is that we have a problem because it's Rey's a girl. I'm like, no. I mentioned this before in my one of my old comic book case series where I went over news, and J.J. Abrams talking, well, if you don't like women in Star Wars, this is the franchise. You're like, Star Wars fans have never had a problem with women in Star Wars. They've had a problem with women taking a lead role in Star Wars, all right? All right, there's Ayla Secura, Ahsoka Tano, Bastila Shan, Jaina Solo, Mara Jade. Where did this come from? Darth Zana, Padme, Leia. Like, no one has a problem with women in Star Wars, JJ. The problem we have is the woman you gave us in Star Wars, who was supposed to carry on all these legacies and is doing a pretty bad job at it. And that's on you, and in part Rian Johnson. But I'm going to give you both benefit of doubt and say it's all on Kathleen Kennedy. Just going to say that. And so then there was the idea, and this is just sort of like a pet peeve that I just never like, which is about Luke.
Yeah. That's it. Because Luke Skywalker's Cinderella. Or Sleeping Beauty,
Yeah.
okay? He can talk to things that don't speak English and understands what they're fucking saying. He gets a fairy godfather instead of a fairy godmother who teaches him how to be the best Jedi in the world in no time fucking flat.
So, no time flat for training. This is a counter-argument in response to the idea that Rey is, quote-unquote, a Mary Sue, that, she doesn't really earn her powers, and to be fair, she doesn't. She just doesn't. The Last Jedi novel does give points that she did train with her staff, when she was on Jakku, so there's points to that. But no time flat. Luke begins his training in A New Hope. All right, and that's basically the idea of, sensing the Force, letting it guide him a bit. And that ends quick because of, Ben Kenobi's killed or sacrificed himself. He leaves his cloak behind and his lightsaber, sadly. Then we'll go to Empire Strikes Back, where we see Luke train with Yoda. And I had to go back and double check. There are references of time passing, where Yoda says, "No more will I train you today," which means they'll pick up training later. And even after that training, Luke just is able to survive a fight with Vader, where a good portion of Vader's time is spent, I need to get you to join the dark side. That's it. And then we get to Return of the Jedi, where Luke, it's the fans have still debated whether or not Luke was truly equal, if Vader was holding back. It's hard to merit that. I would say a little column A, a little column B. There are opportunities that Vader probably didn't take during that fight, but whatever. And we now see within the new canon that Disney has created with Star Wars, all these comics in between have shown that Luke does not become a Jedi in no time flat. He's not even that great of a Jedi in between A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, and I presume we're going to see more struggle between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So, yeah, that doesn't make sense either. Rey, meanwhile, knows the Force roll of 5 minutes, and just is able to do it. She's able to do the Jedi mind trick. She's able to use psychometry, whether subconsciously or unconsciously, and able to track down the memories of, of Luke's lightsaber, Luke/Anakin's lightsaber. These things don't work, okay? And even then, Last Jedi could have fixed all this. We could have gone with the argument that it seems they're going with now in the Allegiance Rise of Skywalker prequel comic, where she can't quite reach that same level of power. But Last Jedi should have been what we did for that. So Rey goes in, hey, I've got this great power, but I can't control it. It's like it's inconsistent. She doesn't know what she's feeling, and the movie doesn't do that. And instead just goes, well, Luke doesn't really train her. She just sort of goes around on her own, resists ultimate temptation of the dark side with what she wants, and is able to just do whatever. So there's no progression. This is the importance of a training arc. All right, anime knows this. Anime lives to know this. Avatar: Last Airbender knew this. The importance of training is also a great insight to not just show how you progress in terms of your powers, but also as a person. Aang is not the same person he was when he arrived at the North Pole to Dance of the Dragons. He's not. And you really have to use something that's big for that. Luke is not the same person he was when he arrived on Dagobah as when he left on Dagobah. And he's not the same person when he returned to Dagobah as he was when he left on Dagobah. So, yeah, I just don't get that. And real quick, because we sort of, probably not, but whatever. And finally, what got me here? What really, really made me want to take time out of what could have been a very relaxing Sunday? This statement here.
And everybody, I know more about the Force than most people because Dave Filoni taught me and George Lucas taught him. And all these video games have fucked people up on what the Force is. Luke's skill doesn't dictate whether he wins or loses. Right. The Emperor doesn't dictate whether he wins or loses. The Force dictates who wins or loses based on balance. And here's the quick version on how to explain it to all these people who fucking think they get to decide. In the first if you want to do this time-wise, Palpatine, you would say, and Yoda are the smartest two. Palpatine clearly smarter because Yoda was blind to the power of the dark side and the seduction of Anakin. So let's talk about the seduction of Anakin fucking Skywalker for a second. If the Emperor is the smartest dude in the universe and knows that the Force dictates this, if he kills who he sees as a rival, Anakin, then he knows the Force is just going to fucking correct that because the Emperor knows this.
So, Freddie Prinze Jr. first goes on the argument that I learned from Dave Filoni, who learned from George, and he tries to break down exactly that your skill, your strength doesn't matter. The Force ultimately decides this, and that isn't. It almost sounds like it makes sense. It almost does, but the problem is that what he has done is he's taken the living force philosophy. So the living force was this thing that Qui-Gon Jinn talked about in the Phantom Menace. The living force, guided us to this point. That is the concept of destiny. And destiny is a fickle thing. It's a funny thing at the same time, too. So by this logic is that the Force picks sides. The Force does what the Force is. I want balance restored. So let's give Sidious all the advantage. He talks about Sidious too. Sidious he contradicts everything we've known about Star Wars. In the sense, we talks about how Sidious he could kill Anakin, but then the Force would create another Anakin to balance it out. Like, well, no, this whole chosen one thing. The Plagueis novel talks about this. Revenge of the Sith hints at this. That the Force did create Anakin, but also that Sidious wanted Anakin as his apprentice. I mean, he flat out says in Revenge of the Sith, like, "Soon I will have a new apprentice." And that's what he's been grooming Anakin for this whole time, to be his apprentice. And if we go by what happened, that Plagueis and Sidious attempt to create life with the Force said, "What are you doing? Creating a child, Shmi Skywalker, no, there was no father." Or the new canon tries to imply that, excuse me, that Sidious created Anakin, but that might just be an example of the grooming that Palpatine took. But we don't quite know how he knew about Anakin from the get-go. Maybe he just knew him when he looked at him, or whatever. Maybe he read the report. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. The Freddie Prinze Jr.'s argument is that the Force determines everything, sort of defeats the purpose of the story. In other words, your choices don't matter. So with the idea that it doesn't matter, like the Force wants balance. Does the Force really want balance? How do we view balance? And how does the Force view balance? There's a light and dark side thing. Like, there's too much dark side. But before that, there was too much light. It feels like he's trying to explain why there are only two in the beginning. That wasn't balanced. That was a rule of two established by Darth Bane, who Dave Filoni mentions in TCW. So therefore, Bane has to be canon. So which means the rule of two is more than likely canon. So, no, that's not why. This argument here is more of an attempt to him wanting to deify, sort of like crank up the living Force. The idea that the Force wants to guide people to certain goals makes sense, but that doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to win. Or did we not learn anything from both Snoke's crappy way of dying and Sidious's much better attempt? The whole "I have foreseen it." That's cool. That he sees this vision in his head. With the Force. The Force has shown him something like, hey, this could happen. This could very easily go our way. And we know that Yoda can see the future too. Like, it's mentioned in, I think it was a novelization. But something else or like implied that when Yoda is fighting Sidious in Revenge of the Sith, he sees a vision. He sees something and says, okay, the Jedi will come back. So he realizes, I've got to survive because of this, all right? The Force guides him, or at least shows him an opportunity. And even more so, the Revenge of the Sith novelization shows the Force guiding you in a different way with Kenobi. Like when Kenobi takes on Grievous, or his fight at, the Emperor's Hand? What was it? When he and Anakin went to save Palpatine. This idea that Kenobi lets the Force guide his motions, guide his movement. The idea that at one point Obi-Wan Kenobi wasn't even there anymore. It was just the Force. That was cool. It's a better way. So I could argue that maybe old FPJ is right. In the hands of a better story, this makes sense. But this new sequel trilogy has not given us better stories. It has given us better ideas. And this has led to this sort of easy defense, like sort of lazy defense. You don't like her because she's a girl. You don't like her because it didn't happen the way you did, because you grew up on video games. Like, I've only played 3 video games in Star Wars: Force Unleashed 2, Revenge of the Sith. All right, and the Force isn't. You could argue that the Force is sort of a bit more accurate in the Force Unleashed, or at least if you got to tone it down a bit. But that is what happens. Skill with the Force can determine whether or not you win. All right, it does. All right, the Force doesn't just pick and choose every battle ever. Like, no, sometimes the Force is like, okay, they're just gonna fight. If they die, they die. You know. FPJ's argument seems to be that the Force is alive, and again that it picks and chooses, that we're all sort of, you know, pawns in the Force's game to get it the exact way it wants it to be. Maybe, maybe not. But the argument that FPJ is giving here, I don't think supports that. Or maybe I could be wrong. Ultimately, though, I think this is just stupid. I think FPJ is upset because Kanan Jarrus was like one of the best things about Rebels, but you know, his new canon's not exactly good. I mean, I did like Kanan Last Padawan. That was a good book, but that's not because of FPJ. And I don't know where I'm going with this argument, though, so I don't know. Overall, though, I think skeptically, the Star Wars community will go like, well, you know, Disney let him loose to shame everybody. I'm like, I don't think that happened. I don't think that happened. I think he's legitimately this misinformed because he does sort of come across as something like, hey, you know, I don't know everything about the Force, and I don't know everything about the Force. The Force is complicated. All right, sometimes it is what he says. It is like this guiding light that he's cranked up to 1,000, where it says, like, you know, give everything to Rey. It doesn't matter that she doesn't know anything about it. All right, no. I want to know what's up with that kid with the broom in The Last Jedi. We're just not going to talk about him again. He doesn't matter. Whatever. So that was this rant. Kind of pointless, kind of not. He talked about Grey Jedi for a bit. I did a video on Grey Jedi. Is a Grey Jedi a valid thing? I would say yes, but not in the way people think it is. It's not this be-all end-all cool thing. It's just someone with probably a bit more common sense. Not someone who says, well, you know, the Jedi can sometimes have a point. The Sith can sometimes have a point. But overall, they're both full of crap. So I'm going to do what I want. That's what I think it is. But anyway, with that in mind, we'll bring this video to close here. If you're new to the Buck Tank, feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. What were your thoughts on this? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you agree with FPJ? Am I missing something? Leave that down in the comments section. I will catch you all later. This is the Buck Tank signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom, like the Force, serve you well.
Star Wars is for fucking kids.
That is why you fail.